Hey everybody, I'm Gary McLean, and you are watching Talent Talk. Thanks for joining us. Just a reminder that if you haven't done so already, please do go to the Talent Talk YouTube channel, subscribe today. As always, your support's appreciated. And another thing we're trying this year, which I think we're kind of caught up now with all the episodes this season, and we're starting to add more from previous seasons, is we're throwing it out to the certain podcasts like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, just to name a handful. If you want to find the full list, you can just check out the YouTube episode details, and the full list should be listed there. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out is this is a live and interactive show. So if you have any comments or questions as the show goes on, feel free to throw it into the comments section, and we will try to address it as the show goes on. Now, today's guest, if you're the kind of person who still listens to the radio on the way into work, you might be familiar with this guy. But only if you listen to Calgary's alternative rock station, X92.9. And I'm hoping I'll see a residual check for that comment there later. We'll find out, I guess. One of the things that drew bringing this guy onto the show for me is that he seems to be so much more than just a radio host. He's a bit of an impressionist, which we'll definitely chat on. He's an avid gym rat, if you will. A family man. He does, some woodworking, which we'll definitely touch on as well. And I'm hoping everybody who will be watching will share my enthusiasm in trying to find out more about this guy and join me in welcoming Andrew Beckler.
Gary.
Andrew.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's cool.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate that. How's your weekend going?
Oh, it's great. It's beautiful in Calgary. We, my wife and I, we bought a house the week before last, so we're in the process of kind of getting all that ready to go, moving from one house to the next, and it's stressful, but it's exciting.
Right? Is it kind of a new build or?
No, it's an older house, but we've just been renting the place we're in right now. Like
Gotcha.
The nature of my work, it's always kind of a risk, I think, to to make a big investment in a city like that, because I'm always like one wrong choice of word away from being out of a job. So
right. And that's definitely going to tie into one of my other questions I have lined up for you later.
For sure.
So you've been with X92.9 now for how many seasons? Or
7 years. 7 years. It was
oh my God, it's been 7 a year? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah. And you were originally, like you were also in a sister station up north, were you not?
No, I came from Edmonton. I was working for a Bell station up there.
Okay, that's what it was.
But but I think I've lived in 6 or 7 different places, worked at 6 or 7 different stations, which is kind of how the industry works. It's very much like it is for a pro athlete, right? You go somewhere small and you kind of work your way up, and the pay is just terrible at first, and then hopefully you land in a bigger market. And ultimately, I think a morning show is the most prestigious show on a station, so that's generally where the most money is, and
right.
Kind of made it. I love Calgary. I always wanted to work at X. In my opinion, it's the coolest station in the country, just in terms of the branding and the kind of things that the promo team does and what they allow us to do on the air. So landing at X and then eventually getting on the morning show was just like, it was the dream.
Well, and you know what? That was actually going to be another one of my questions: is how much freedom do you guys actually have on the station as to what you throw out programming wise or anything like that?
Like basically total freedom. I can count on one hand the number of times where my bosses have said maybe don't talk about that, or it's not very often. And when you think about how much content we put on the air during a week, like we have a 4-hour show 5 days a week, it's lots of different content, and very rarely are we told, almost never, like don't do that, don't talk about that. And I think as a show, we go places that other shows don't. So we're really given quite a long leash, and our bosses kind of trust us to know where the line is, I think.
Right.
So far we've found the line. We haven't walked over it too many times or too far yet. So.
Well, and is it fairly common, like across radio stations, to have that kind of freedom, or is this fairly unique for X92.9?
I think it's unique, and it's also unique in this day and age, because I think everybody is kind of watching their ass, and like you can punch around on the radio dial, and I don't think you'll hear too many shows that touch some of the topics that we're able to. I mean, we do a lot of stupid stuff too on the air, which is lots of fun. But if there is a big political or social issue or something, like we're allowed to go after that and give our opinions, as long as they're, based in fact and they're not deliberately inflammatory or offensive, then yeah, but I'm not that kind of person off the air anyways. So I don't I don't think I say things that would get me fired off the air either. So
Well, and that's kind of what I like about like listening to your show as well. Is I find that you're very open-minded in your conversations. Like you're willing to look at both sides of it and have that third-person perspective almost, which I think you don't get that a lot, right? Everybody's got their opinion, and that's the way it is.
yeah,
I
well,
don't get that vibe with you. So
thank you. I appreciate that. That's kind of what we strive for. And I mean, not everyone's like this anymore, but I'm comfortable hearing opinions that I don't agree with. I think it's healthy. I think it's important. So, and our listeners are great for the most part too. Like even if they don't agree with me, they still know that I'm, not malicious. I'm not hateful. We just maybe don't agree on one thing, and that's fine. So,
right.
yeah.
And just sort of curious, like in that aspect, do you have let's go both sides of it. A, do you have a stalker? And B, do you have a hate group or anybody that's like, oh my god, I hate this guy? And because I'm sure personalities that are in this kind of role, they've got to have a little bit of that, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think if people, whether they love you or hate you, it's important that people have an opinion on you. If they don't care, then I think you're failing in this role, because
Yeah, that's fair.
our goal is to get people to engage with what we're saying. And if people don't care, if they don't even know your name, well, then you're wasting your time on the air, I think. But I don't have a stalker. My co-host, I'm actually, like, there's been a few incidents at the station. Like, my co-host actually went through the whole legal process with a guy who I think is currently serving time. And there's a story. I think the Herald wrote a story about it when it happened, but
Okay.
you can find that. Yeah, that was pretty intense. Like, we had the police kind of watching the building for a few days, and I think the guy was just unwell, and I haven't had a stalker yet in any of my jobs. Maybe I'm not good looking enough. I don't know. So,
I mean, I guess I shouldn't really make light of the situation. Like, oh, do you have a stalker? Yeah, it can be a pretty serious thing for sure.
But I know what you're saying. It's a very public job, and I talk about intimate details of my life on the air. Our diehard listeners know my wife's name, my kids' names, how old they are. So yeah, it is very intimate and very personal. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like so many people listening, yeah, and people can have their opinions. And, yeah.
For sure.
So when it comes to education, like, where did you go to school to even learn to become a radio host? Is it radio host or is it DJ? Like, do we still use the term DJ nowadays? I don't know.
I don't say DJ because we don't jockey any discs.
Yeah,
It's
right.
all digital,
Exactly.
right? And I think DJ means something else to people now, right? Like, you think of a club DJ, you think of a music producer as a DJ. But I just say radio host. I say I host a radio show if somebody asks what I do. I went to school in my hometown of Saskatoon. It was a 6-month course, and it was good because it was very quick, and it was like a kind of a crash course on radio, and then you get working right away. So I did an internship, and then I got hired after that. But I would say that I came out of that, in 6 months, it's not really enough time to learn what you need to know. I think a lot of this job is very much like learning on the job. So I felt kind of in over my head when I started in the business. And I think if you could dig up those early tapes of my shows, it would be, I'm glad they don't exist. We'll say that. So yeah, it takes a while to just become comfortable and to figure out like how to be yourself on the air and how to even talk like yourself. When I started out, it was very much like it used to be in the 70s and 80s when all radio hosts had these like big over the top announcer voices, right? Duh,
Right.
You're listening to 92.9, like that. And so it took a long time to like work that out of my delivery on the air. Years, actually. It took years. And now I feel like when I'm talking to Seanna on the air, I feel like I'm just sitting across from a friend and we're just having a conversation, just like you and I are right now. So yeah, people always say, do your radio voice. And I was like, well, I hope this is it. Like, I hope this is what I sound like all the time. I hope I'm not putting on a fake voice, but yeah.
Well, and again, like you've done the old timey voice a few times as well through, little bits or whatever that you guys have done. And I always get a kick out of those too, because I'm like, oh yeah, like when in that time, like why was it so different then that they had to have this persona of that
Yeah.
I can't even do it, to be honest. So
Well, and it changed because like in the early days of radio, like in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, everybody talked like this, see, right? And then Gary McLean, host of Talent Talk, and then it went to that big like over the top 80s, like 70s, 80s voice.
yeah,
And then I think we kind of realized, and maybe maybe podcasting and stuff had something to do with it, but people don't want to be talked to like that. I don't think they wanted someone to talk to them like they would talk to anybody. Like if I met you in a bar and I was like, oh, Gary McLean, love the show. You know, you'd be like, this is what is wrong with you? Did you have a stroke, man? Like,
right. Yeah, you've already had too much drinks. Like,
yeah,
you're done. Let's
yeah.
call you a cab.
So I think it kind of ties it. Like we really strive, or at least I do. I really strive to be authentic on the air. Like I'd never say anything that I don't believe. I don't try to be someone I'm not. And that comes right down to how you talk, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And like, did you know as a kid this is what you wanted to do, or was this something that kind of developed as you got older? Or
yeah, I've always loved music and stuff, but I mean, I think getting into radio because you love music is a bad idea because they're going to take the songs that you love and they're going to play them until you don't love them anymore. So it's just the way the formula works, right? So I was working as a carpenter when I got out of high school and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought, should I be a pilot? Should I become a firefighter? Should I do something like that? And I was working as a carpenter and we had the radio on at the job site every day. And then I was like, I think I could do this. And I think everybody who listens to the radio thinks they can do it, and they probably can, but I did it. So I was like, well, I'll give it a try. And then once I got into it a bit, I was like, man, I really don't have a backup plan. So if this doesn't go well, I'm in big trouble. And I'm still in that place because now I have, a wife and 2 kids relying on me. So I still have no backup plan. If this doesn't work, I'm in trouble.
well, I mean, so like you said, you kind of do some working on the side. I think. Well, we chatted briefly about that before the show.
Yeah,
Do you think that's something you could push if you needed to?
maybe, but it would be. I mean, I'm lucky. They pay me quite well to do the stupid things I do on the air. So I wouldn't be able to make that much money doing woodworking, I don't think. So it would be a different life if I wasn't working in radio. But it is kind of one of those things where I wake up every day and I'm like, eventually they're going to figure this out that they shouldn't be paying me to do this. And
Well,
I feel very lucky in that sense.
and I'm assuming because you were mentioning earlier, the morning slot is kind of the coveted slot, or whatever the case is. It is, and yeah, you don't necessarily need to answer this, but is the pay grade kind of dependent on where you're sitting in the schedule?
Partially on that, and partially on just the size of the city that you're working in too. So like to be on a top rated morning show in Toronto or Vancouver is going to be the most money anybody will make in the business, right?
Okay.
And then like I think when I started, just based on the hours I was working and my salary, I think I was making like less than minimum wage. So
Right.
and then you work your way up from there. But the industry has really changed. Like there are still a few older guys kicking around that have like huge contracts, but I think those days are probably over.
Right.
So you don't get in this business to get rich. You get into it because you love what you're doing. And every morning when I wake up at 4:30, which really sucks. And then, and when the alarm goes off every day, I'm just like, no, it can't be. It can't already be time to get up. And then 5 minutes later, I'm excited about the day and excited about what we have planned for the show that day. So yeah, I feel very fortunate every single day to get to do this. It's basically just like I just talk about what I think is funny or interesting, and hopefully people find it funny and interesting too.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So when it comes, like, are you a night person or are you like a day person, morning person?
Well, I've been forced to become a day person. I used to be a night person, but I don't have a real hard time getting up. I don't drink coffee, so I get up and I'm ready to go usually.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm definitely a night guy myself. Like on the weekends, I can easily stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, and then
Oh yeah.
I'll sleep till like 10 or whatever. But of course, during the week, I definitely don't get up at 4:30. I'm a couple hours after you. 6:30 I get up, and on average I'm like still sleeping by 12:31 in the morning, and then I'm up at 6:30.
Okay.
Just and my body's just gotten used to that. I think I'm just there, I guess, with it.
Have you been working from home?
We did for a while. We actually went back to the office June last year, and we've been in the office since. So almost a year now, I guess. Yeah, June's coming
Okay.
up pretty quick.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer working from home.
Okay.
Yeah, for various reasons. I mean, the maintenance on my car alone has been great, right? It sat there for almost a year and a half, not being driven. I
Yeah.
go out and start it once in a while just to keep the juices flowing in it. That's really about it. So I was able to lower the insurance, no gas money, no maintenance, no nothing, right? So there's a lot of savings there.
Can you get the same amount of work done at home as you do at work?
Oh yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, I'm pretty sure that they probably got more out of me working at home.
Really?
Just because I get up in the morning, I start at the same time and just walk downstairs and start the computer, and there I go.
Yeah.
And then, well, I have no commute home, so I'll just keep working until I get whatever I need to get done, right?
That's so interesting. I found it so interesting how like some people prefer one, some people prefer the other. Like I had to work from home. I had COVID, and then I had a couple of like waiting for test results and stuff. So I broadcasted from the basement a couple times, and I hated it. Like it was very It's like it was very difficult to remember that I was on the air because I'm just like sitting on this old couch in my basement, like in my gitch with the microphone. I'm like, man, there's like thousands of people on the other end of this thing. Like, don't say something stupid, right? So
Right.
it's I found it very difficult even to like get into that mode, and like the fact that I have a co-host, we feed off each other's visual cues a lot too. So
Right.
I really miss that. There's always like a slight delay, so like the comedic timing isn't quite there, and I just like I need to get into the building and be around kind of other people, and like I think we're more creative that way. We bounce jokes off each other. And even like I got like I said, I got two small kids, so when I wouldn't even tell them I was working in the basement, but they'd figure it out, and they'd come down in the middle of the show. So I got like the microphone in this hand, and I'm like, get out, pushing the kid away, trying to do a break. It wasn't easy, so I much prefer to be in the studio, and I don't think I'd do it any other way.
And I totally agree. Like, especially when it comes to a creative job like you're doing, right? And again, you've got a partner to work with, right? Me and myself, I sit in front of the desk all day. If I need to, I throw on the headset and I call somebody. But I don't need to have that for my job, right? I don't need to have that. Yeah, I think it's hugely important, right? Like you said, with the physical cues and everything else. So hard to do on a microphone with no camera, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I can see your side of it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So speaking of with working with Seanna, and I remember when you guys kind of first started on the show, like you guys seem to have a chemistry right off the bat. Like, did you guys kind of know each other beforehand, or?
We knew each other a little bit. She worked at that same Bell building in Edmonton that I did, but for a different station. So we kind of knew each other. We didn't have a lot of overlap there, but we'd been out partying a couple times. I slept on her floor one night in Edmonton because it was me and her and Tyler Middleton, who used to work at X99 and now works in Vancouver at Seafox. We had all gone out on White Avenue for some beers, and then Seanna lived just off White, so came back there, and Tyler and I both slept on the floor in Seanna's one bedroom apartment. So we knew each other like from there, but it was our old boss just seemed to have a real knack for like hearing chemistry before it was there. Okay. And I mean, lots of shows don't work out, right? Like you'll put two people together and they just like there isn't chemistry, there isn't any comedic timing. Maybe they don't get along, which is kind of an uncomfortable situation, I think. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we right from the beginning we felt pretty comfortable, and then I think once you get further and further along, like oftentimes you don't have to speak, right? It's like a work marriage, right? You just kind of know each other that well. So I know when I come up with ideas, I know what Seanna will like and what she'll be able to contribute to, and same for her. So,
well, and I know you guys, and I, obviously maybe I just missed it because of COVID and I wasn't working from, the office for a while, but I haven't heard her play a lot of the violin lately. What's going on with that?
Well, yeah, it was when COVID happened, we used to give away tickets with it, but there were no tickets for like 2 years, right? There was nothing to give away so the segment kind of went away just because there were no prizes.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
Now that shows are back, maybe we'll have to think about bringing that one back.
Okay. Oh, where's I can go with that? Oh, when it comes to when you guys are on the show, like what I wanted to kind of get around, because of course I think a lot of people when they listen to radio shows in the morning or whatever time of day, they just figure, okay, you do your 5 6 hours in the studio and then you're done. That's not the
Mhm.
case, right? Like you guys are doing so much more behind the scenes afterwards, right? Like I think you guys even have your own little podcast that you do as well.
We do, yeah. It's basically just like the highlights of our show from that morning. But it comes out every day. It's like it's called the BNS in 20 minutes or less, but it's like usually 30 minutes now, so the name isn't accurate anymore. Um, but yeah, it's been fun to grow that. Like we have quite a loyal following who will download that thing right when it comes out every single day, and they refer to themselves as Venus heads because BNS
Yes,
said very
yeah,
quickly sounds like Venus. So yeah, so that's been a lot of fun, the podcast. But you're right, the bulk of the work is done outside of the studio. Like when we go in there, we basically know what's going to happen every hour, and it's just a matter of like executing it. Then that's the easy part. Like the heavy lifting is all done usually the night before when we're trying to come up with things to talk about. And that is by far the hardest part of this job, is just coming up with that much content, and it all has to be like, it's got to be fresh. You have to have a unique angle on it, because you got to remember, like, if something happens, if someone slaps someone at the Oscars, the whole city's going to be talking about it. What's our angle that sets us apart from how everybody else is going to be talking about it? So we're constantly thinking about like that. You never really get to turn off from this job. Like I'm only on the air 4 hours a day, and then I'm home by 11 o'clock usually, but you're kind of always working in that
hmm
sense. Like, even if throughout our conversation, if you say something where I'm like, hey, that's cool, like I'll make a little note, because I always have to be thinking about the next day's show. Even on vacation, it's still like, gotta make notes. So you don't get to leave your work at all. Like, not at all.
right. So how many hours do you figure you probably actually put in?
Maybe 6 or 7. Yeah, because we're on the air for 4 hours, and then there's like, there's voice work after, and then there's the podcast, and then we try to maintain a bit of a social media presence too. So I'm always thinking about what videos we could shoot, what kind of things we could post, and then there's the prep side of it, which takes a couple hours a night. But having two people in that sense is really nice too, because I can just kind of come up with an idea, and then Sean and I can talk through it. Whereas like she's in Toronto this weekend, so I'm by myself on the air from Monday, Tuesday, and it's like 3 times as much work, because everything that's said on the air has to come from me. It has to be like thought about before I say it, so I don't get fired.
Right?
So, yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
that makes sense for sure.
yeah, so those are more stressful days for sure. But it's gotten easier because we've gotten better at the prep process. But it's still a pretty easy job, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, because Shauna is such like an integral part of your work day or whatever. Um, and I'm just kind of curious in this kind of industry, do you find that your work overlaps with your personal? Like, do you find that you struggle with balance sometimes between the
In
two?
terms of like with my own relationships, like with
Um, yeah,
like
that and yeah, just finding the time to actually spend with your family and go out and do what you do, because I think you do some camping and stuff like that as well, right? So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, and that's always like, that's kind of a work in progress too. What my wife and I, we butt heads about that sometimes, because I'll be like I only have 3 things to talk about on the air tomorrow, and like when the mics go on, I can't be in that situation. So it's like I need to lock myself away and do some reading, come up with something here, and I think and then she's stuck with the kids, so that can be kind of frustrating for her.
yeah,
But it really all depends on like on the week. Sometimes I have more than enough things to talk about. Sometimes I'm just like panicking. That's like like people have the recurring nightmare about like they're speaking in public and then they're naked. I don't have that nightmare. I have where I turn the microphone on and I don't have prep. I have nothing to say, and it's the worst.
I can totally understand that. I mean, even with me doing what I'm doing, sometimes I'll have a brain fart and I'll totally lose my spot as to where I wanted to go with the conversation,
Yeah,
and I'm almost sitting there live with you going,
And
Yeah.
a good co-host will recognize that and jump in, right? So
Right. Yeah,
that,
exactly. So it's definitely a bonus when you have that. But again, when you're on your own, like Monday, Tuesday for yourself, you're not going to
yeah,
have that to rely on, right? So,
we we call that a boof. So our show. If you lose your train of thought, you start stumbling, start messing up, you're boofing.
yep,
Boof.
yep.
Yeah.
And I do it a lot. I don't know if that's because I'm getting older or what, but definitely seems to be a lot of that happening. We do have a question that popped up. Uh, here we go. Have you ever gone into a show cold with almost nothing to say?
I try not to, but it has happened, especially like I said, if I'm by myself for a whole week, because we have I think 15 content breaks per show, so do the math on that. That's 75 unique pieces of content throughout a week that we're responsible for. So and sometimes by Friday, I'm just like, man, I'm kind of out of things to say, and you watch the clock count down. As the song ends, and you're like, yeah, still don't know what I'm gonna say here. Like that's the stressful part. So I try to avoid that situation at all costs because it's a nightmare.
So speaking of, yeah, what do you guys do in between, like while the music's playing?
We have a text line in the studio, so we're responding to texts for the people who are listening,
Okay.
which is lots of fun. I like That's one of my favorite parts is reading people's reactions to what we're doing on the air, because I'm kind of the same, even like when I browse content on the internet, or if I watch a YouTube video, or if I listen to an especially interesting podcast, I also want to go and see how other people are reacting to it. So the fact that it's reactions to our own content is really cool.
Right.
So I love getting lots of text on the show, and we're not a real like text or call heavy show. Like some shows really rely on that. Every break is a topic, and then the next break is responses to that topic. And Shauna and I don't approach the show like that. We always kind of have like a self-contained piece of content, and then if somebody has something interesting to add, then maybe we'll throw that on the air. But it usually has to be stronger than whatever we had planned next. So
Right.
yeah. Or sometimes we'll get great calls that we don't have time for on the air, so we'll put them on our podcast. So we're doing that, and we're watching social media. Oftentimes we're producing the audio clips for the next thing that's coming up, because we don't have a dedicated show producer. We do it all ourselves. So it moves fairly quickly in there. Like I often look up and it's like, holy crap, the show's over.
And so during your time there, or actually not necessarily even with X92.9, but have you had like a musical guest that you were so super stoked to have on the show? Or
Yeah, well, I mean, when I first started there, when Sean and I were on the afternoon show, and like I was a big fan of a lot of the bands that we play, and I think the first week we were there, we had a takeover with the Arkells, and I had been a big Arkells fan since their debut album. So they came in with a bunch of listeners, and they played some songs, and they performed some songs, they played some songs that they wanted to hear on the air, and it was so much fun. So that was really cool. We don't do as many guests since we're on the morning show, just because oftentimes artists aren't up at that time.
yeah,
And you always hear like I listen to quite a few podcasts with that are hosted by stand-up comedians or with comedians as guests, and I think it's kind of like a running joke among them that they have to get up early and do these like cheesy morning shows and stuff to promote whatever gig they have going on in town. So we don't have many guests like that anymore, but the guests that we do have are more, like we'll have the mayor on every once in a while, or we have a few experts on whatever topic is trending that day, and those are fun to do. But I don't even really see many of the bands anymore. I don't know the bands that well. That's more for the afternoon show and our music director.
right. We had another question pop up here. So how many people are there in the team to get the show on the air?
The show
Just
itself
you
is
two?
just me and Shauna, but there's like behind the scenes, there's a whole team of people, right? There's the people who produce all the commercials and all what we call the station imaging, which is, all like the X92.9, all that stuff that you hear in between the songs. And then there's, our whole sales team. There's the team that monitors all the commercials and make sure that, the clients are getting what they paid for. And so, yeah, I don't know how many people we have in the building right now. Our company is is based out of Regina. But yeah, in terms of our show, it's basically just me and Shauna. We come in there and like everything that we say, we came up with.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to the scheduling of the songs and then
that's handled by our music director. Yeah.
Our
music director, Matt Barry, he puts the songs together. So we come in, we look at our log, we see what's going to play. So it always surprises me that a lot of people still think that like each show is picking their own songs, and at least in FM terrestrial radio, that's not the case.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? And that's kind of why I wanted to get you on the show, is kind of get the nitty gritty and behind, and
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, everybody has this kind of visualized persona of what they hear, but is that really what happens? I don't know. So
yeah, yeah, and I find that interesting for every job. Like I love talking to people about what they do for work, and there's so much that the public doesn't see, right? So
yeah,
it's fascinating.
Absolutely. See, I'm having a boof right now.
He's boofing.
No. Oh yeah. Of course, what I wanted to chat about also, and we briefly chatted on it before the show as well, is like I had mentioned, you kind of do some interesting voice stuff. We were talking a little bit about the old timey voice. You also do Don Cherry, and then you and Shauna also do Buck and
Pat from the Blue Jays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So coming up with those, and my other question is, like, when it came to Don Cherry, for example, did you practice that for a while before, or just that's something you just do?
I've been doing it for years on the air, and it probably has gotten a little better over the year. At least I hope it's gotten better. But I threw a video on TikTok of me taking that Don Cherry impression through the Tim Hortons drive-through. And the responses were all like, this doesn't sound anything like Don Cherry. And then other people are like, this is great. So I don't know, maybe it's in the ear of the beholder.
Oh, I think we
but yeah, so I've just kind of honed it over the years, and it's I love doing it. It's so much fun to do that kind of stuff. My son is 7, and he listens to our podcast every night as he goes to sleep, and those are his favorite segments, any of the ones with a silly voice. So
right.
But it's fun because, like, when I read to him, like, he and I just finished reading Holes, and before that we read The Hobbit, and I try to do a different voice for all the characters in those books. And I mean, I don't have voices for 13 different dwarves in The Hobbit, but it's fun, so they get a real kick out of that, and I enjoy it too, and it's so much fun to do on the air too. I always get excited when I know we're going to do Buck and Pat, or when we're going to do Don Cherry. So
yeah, for sure. Well, and that's the thing is, because I was kind of asking you before the show if you've ever done other voice work, or if you planned on doing other voice work, and your scenario is kind of how I got involved in the film industry as well, is I would read stories to my kids and change my voice, do a pirate or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. And then I was looking for some extra money, and I just figured, well, I'll just go to an agency and, do some voice work for some cartoons or something, thinking it was that easy. And of course, I still have yet to do any voice work. So, that was like 10, 11 years ago. So.
I did the same thing. I put together a demo of all my commercial reads and stuff, and I don't have a great voice. Like, there's a few people at the station who have far better voices than I do. Like, our midday guy, Justin, has an awesome, like, just a deep, rich voice. But I was like, oh, maybe somebody would hear something in my voice they'd like. So I put this demo together and I pushed it out to a production studio, and just, never heard a word back. Like, I don't think it's as simple as just thinking that you have a decent voice. Like, it is a real art form, the people who are good at it. And, the ones who are very good at it make a ton of money doing it. Like, a friend of mine is involved in like radio voicing. She said she knows a girl in the States who, like, she just works from home, has a pool out back. She wakes up and she, makes a coffee, checks her emails, does a bit of voice work, goes back, lays in the pool, come check. She makes like $5 million a year doing that or something. Like,
oh wow,
just insane. But there are very few who are that good, and so much of it is just the networking too, right? It's you really have to get out there and push yourself and make those connections and promote yourself. And I feel like I don't really have the time for that right now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So, you don't feel that your current role allows for that, like building that kind of network, or is it just because you're so focused on the day to day?
I think so. Yeah. Like my top priority is my show, and then, well, I should say my top priority is my family, and then my show, and then our side business, and then all my social media stuff and relationships with friends, and I'm sure maybe one day I'll give it a go. I would love to narrate an audiobook. I think that'd be so much fun.
Okay.
And probably wouldn't even have to pay me that much to do it. I would just really enjoy the project. But
yeah, well, I definitely got a couple colleagues that are doing that right now. So yeah, and they're doing okay. Like
yeah,
they enjoy it, and a couple of them have built in their own like basement
that's
studio
cool.
booth, and yeah, which I still need to do, but I need to clean out my basement so I can actually do this better.
Where are you doing this right now? What room of your house?
I am literally in a little nook in my kitchen.
Okay. Well, it sounds good.
It's it doesn't sound as bad as I thought it would. It does carry a little bit. There's a little bit of, like, if I listen to the playback, there's a little bit of an echo, but
yeah,
it could be worse. So
I
won't complain yet. Okay, yeah, there we
we're
go.
having a little kitchen party here, a little East Coast kitchen party.
Perfect, right? Yeah, should break up the tea set. Yeah, no, that's very. I don't know if I should bring this one up or not, because your social media stuff, you're on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I found this on your Twitter, actually. There's I think you got it pinned right now. It's your first TikTok or whatever with your son.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and I was kind of watching it, and then at the end of it, I was kind of like, well, how did that actually end up playing out? Like, did the teacher actually say that, or so?
Should we say what he said? Are we allowed to?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we can say that.
My son came home last year, so he was in kindergarten, and said the gym teacher called him a strong pussy, and my wife and I were like, that can't be right. Like it doesn't even really make sense, and two, there's no way that a teacher is saying this to kindergarten students. But then we're like, well, maybe she did, because she knows that nobody would believe it. She
right? Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Tell your parents? No one's gonna believe your story. So he was explaining this to us, and I made a video about it, and we're like, no, that's not right. And he's like, it's true. So we think she probably had a bit of an accent, and she said strong person. Like, oh, you're such a strong person, and he heard strong pussy, which is way funnier.
It is way, yeah. I was just like, really? Because I was having the same struggle. I'm like, I can't see a teacher saying that. Like, they're just asking to be kicked out.
But so I thought TikTok was so stupid before that. I thought it was all like dances and stuff. And a friend who works in radio in Vancouver was like, this needs to go on TikTok. I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. And the video didn't really blow up on TikTok or anything, but I have had quite a few blow ups since then. And I'm completely hooked on TikTok, like to the point that I don't even really pay attention to my other social media accounts anymore, because the payoff on TikTok is just so much bigger.
Oh, that's very interesting, because I'm like you originally, where I've been avoiding it like the plague. I've never even looked at the app, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because same thing, right? Like I see clips on Instagram or whatever, it's dancing, right?
Yeah.
I'm just like, no. But I mean, I've had a couple acting friends who've done some cool stuff with it though too, right? So I was kind of okay.
Well, they see that company has dialed in their algorithm to the point that like it serves you up exactly what you want to see. And if you do have a video that people are interested in, it'll go nuts. Like it took me, I only have like 4,500 followers on Instagram, I think, and it took me 10 years to build that. I got that in a weekend on TikTok.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so it's hard not to keep going back to the platform when it rewards you like that. And really, I think like the format of your show would probably work really well for that, right? Like you just quick clips of something interesting a guest said or interesting exchange that you had with them. I think that would.
Yeah.
Oh, family's home. You guys bounce the tram for a bit? Oh boy.
It's not done yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know. I might have to start looking at it. You know?
Yeah, I think it could work really well for you. I mean, there's an art form to it, like any of the social media platforms, but once you get it, it's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
rewarding.
absolutely. Well, since the family is home, maybe we can actually talk about the family business of the woodworking because I know,
Sure.
like I said, I've got one person watching that might be interested in what you do for the woodworking.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you need to know?
Well, like, do you have what's kind of your focus in terms of what you make?
We. This is funny. For the longest time, I'm just going to take you out to my front steps where the family is, and let's do that.
Yeah, let's do
For,
that.
for the longest time, I described our product as white girl shit. Like it's that real like farmhouse aesthetic sort of thing. Is that my address right in the back? Maybe I'll
There we go. Yeah,
go. Yeah, so just like that distressed wood look sort of thing, and it was very lucrative for a while because it was easy to build and the materials weren't that expensive. But I feel like that aesthetic is almost kind of run its course.
okay,
So we're sort of looking for the next trend to cash in on here. But I honestly, it's not even for the money. I just really love the work. It's so different than the work that I do day to day, right? Which is, you know, all about using your head. Whereas I can go out there and use my hands, and it's like
for sure.
pop in a podcast or an audiobook and just kind of like get lost in the work for a bit. I really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, for sure. Like my dad was really big on that kind of stuff. He would like we would actually just go down to the riverbanks. He would find some driftwood, and he would
Yeah.
make something out of it. Like I remember we carried this huge tree trunk that was laying in the riverbank back home, and then he like cleaned it all up, sanded it down, and made like this glass tabletop table out of it, and like it was all
Wow.
varnished and like
What was his day job?
um he was kind of he didn't really have a steady day job. He was kind of a jack of all trades. He would kind of do some plumbing work or whatever carpentry work for somebody who needed it and just get paid cash under the table.
Yeah.
Um,
Just one of those guys that
just
like kind of understood it. And
yeah, yeah,
I'm so impressed by those guys because I don't consider myself to be one of them. Like everything I do in the wood shop is a challenge. Like everything, it's challenging to me at least. And even with the hours I've spent doing it, like I know guys who will, you know, this is the first table I ever built, and it's beautiful. It's way better than anything I've ever made. So some people are just like geared differently like that.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, and then he moved kind of from the woodworking. He went into like stone, and he was like making stone sculptures. Like he made a massive horse's head out of marble, and
Cool.
I was just like, yeah, it was way out of my realm. Or he'd do like a little. He made this like little wooden base, just like with some sticks and intertwining wood, and then on top he had like red alabaster dolphins that he had modeled or
Wow.
did his thing with. Like, oh
Yeah. The craftsman, eh?
and he would just do it. Like he wasn't getting paid for a lot of that. He was just doing it because he enjoyed doing it. And yeah, I mean, I'm just way beyond anything I could do for sure.
Yeah, it's a nice creative outlet. It's just it's different work, and it's rewarding because when you're done, you can see what you did, and yeah, I really enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah. So where does that interest kind of stem from for you? Where did that kind of grow? Was that something with your family or your dad when you were younger? Or?
My dad wasn't handy at all. He has since become quite a bit more handy in his retirement, but no, I just I don't know. I've always kind of enjoyed that sort of thing. I've always had a ton of respect for the people who are very good at it. And yeah, it's blended really nicely with my work here. And even when I was working as a carpenter, I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. I was like, I don't want to do this forever. And it's so different when you're working on your own projects than when you're working on someone else's, right?
Right.
Like I only take the jobs that I want to do, or I only build the things that we want in our house. Whereas if you're coming into work every day and they're like, do this, then it's not the same.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? We're about 45 minutes into the show. Normally, I say minimum we'll do a 30, and then if we go a little bit beyond, we go a little bit beyond. Um, So I don't know. Your family's back now, so I'm not going to really hold you up from your family here. We'll kind of wrap things up a little bit, but I just wanted to get another feel from you in regards to like, do you feel you're at home right now with X92.9? Do you kind of see this? Hopefully, I know the market is always, you never know with radio
Yeah,
stations, but as far as you would like to see it, is that kind of where you want to stay?
it's the best job I've ever had, and you know, if I could in this
Oh, you're cutting out there a little bit.
in this seat for another. You know,
Yeah, we've kind of lost audio with you and video,
awesome.
actually.
Can you guys just please be quiet here?
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Kind of got you back, I think. Well, sort of. All right. There we go.
Hey,
Perfect.
sorry about that.
Oh no, it's all right. It's all good. Yeah, I
I'm back in the
understand with
house.
Wi-Fi sometimes that's yeah. Once you unplug, that's it.
But to answer your question, yeah, like this is, I don't think at this point I would want to move the family to a bigger market. Like there was a time when I was younger where maybe I would have, you know, taken a stab at going to Toronto or Vancouver if the opportunity came up, or into the States. But Calgary is just a really great place for a family. We really love it here. And I think, yeah, if I could stay here for as long as I can, hopefully the ratings stay strong. Hopefully I don't screw up and get fired.
Yeah, well, and it's like we've kind of talked about it already a little bit, where cancel culture is so prevalent right now, right? Like it takes nothing to get canceled. It seems.
Yeah,
which is very unfortunate.
Well, I always joke that like if I do get fired, it's probably for something that I've already said. You know,
Right.
that something that's on our podcast from 5 years ago, and 5 years from now, we will collectively decide that that isn't okay. And I don't even know what that thing is yet, but people don't seem to be very forgiving of like, oh, this was said at that time when it wasn't a big deal. And now, you know, when people want blood, they want blood, right? It just takes, and that takes enough people tweeting at our advertisers, and that could be the enemy. So,
right. Yeah.
so I try to be careful of that, but
it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, it seems to be part of our culture nowadays. Yeah. Other than that, I think we can kind of wrap it up for the most part. I do want to thank you for coming on to the show and being my guest.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to talk radio. So I think it's really cool what you're doing here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I know I kind of threw it out there. One day I was listening to your show and I thought, oh, you know what? I want to talk to this guy. So I just threw out a request, and thankfully you were kind enough to say sure. So thanks again. We'll definitely be hearing you on the radio. So again, X92.9 folks, make sure you're listening to that, at least the morning show. Now listen to it all. It's fine.
Sounds good.
Thanks, man. And I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll chat soon. And like I said before at the beginning of the show, if you don't mind hanging around for another 2 minutes, that'd be great. And
Absolutely.
we'll see the rest of you next week.